All right, let's get started. We're diving deep today in something really important: religious freedom.
Hmm.
We're going to be exploring a talk called To Heal the World, given by Elder Ronald A. Rasband.
Oh, yeah.
He's from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and this address, he gave it back in April 2022 at their big general conference.
Okay.
And you know what? Even though it was a couple of years ago, the stuff he talks about is super relevant to what's going on in the world right now. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy how timely it is.
Yeah.
So we're not going to just like summarize what he said. We want to actually pull out the important insights, the nuggets of wisdom about how religious freedom affects us,
Yeah.
both individually and as a society. Plus, we've got some historical parallels that might just blow your mind. Get ready for it.
I love that.
So the way Elder Rasband starts his talk is really interesting. He talks about all the crises that were happening in the world back in 2022. Fires, storms, wars, earthquakes, you name it. It's like he's painting a pretty bleak picture.
Well, and he wasn't shying away from that at all, was he? I mean, and to be honest, a lot of those problems, they haven't gone away, have they? We're
Hmm.
still dealing with them in some form or another.
It's true, yeah. It's almost like he's setting the stage, right, for this even deeper issue: attacks on religious freedom all over the globe. He even calls it a scourge. And what struck me was it's not about just one specific event or country. It's this much bigger thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's like there's this growing trend of pushing religion and faith out of public life, like it doesn't belong there. And so we're not just talking about being able to go to church or temple or whatever. It's also about being able to talk about your beliefs, to live them out, and to do it all while respecting others' right to do the same. It's about respecting each person's choices when it comes to faith.
I think that's a really important distinction. It's not just about freedom of worship, it's about so much more than that. So, to really get why this matters so much, Elder Rasband takes us back in time to the early days of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And these folks, they went through some intense persecution, being driven from their homes over and over again. Can you imagine having to flee from New York to Ohio, then to Missouri, where the governor literally issued an order to get rid of them, all because of their beliefs? Talk about a high-stakes situation for religious freedom.
I know, right? It's hard to even imagine that happening today.
I know, it's wild.
And here's the thing, it's in the middle of all this craziness, 1842, the church publishes these 13 fundamental beliefs they have.
Okay.
And one of them, right there in the mix, is all about the right to worship, however your conscience tells you, and get this, giving everybody else that same right.
Yeah.
It's like they were saying, look, we've been through the ringer, so we get how crucial it is to respect everyone's beliefs.
Yeah, like they lived it. Right. So that conviction, it's so powerful that Joseph Smith, he's the founder of the church, he says straight up that he's willing to defend the rights of people from every single religion out there, not just his own. Talk about walking the walk. He was totally driven by this love of liberty for everyone.
It's inspiring, really.
It is. So fast forward to today. The church has gone from this small group facing extermination to over 17 million members around the world,
Wow.
and over half of them actually live outside the United States.
That's amazing growth.
It is, right. Now, in 2020, for their 200th anniversary, they put out this proclamation, and it's beautiful, emphasizing God's love for all his children, no matter what nation they're from. And that message of inclusivity, it carries over to their current prophet, Russell M. Nelson. He really hammers home freedom, kindness, and fairness for everyone, recognizing that we're all brothers and sisters, children of a loving Heavenly Father. And then Elder Rasband dives into the nitty-gritty of why religious freedom is so beneficial, highlighting 4 key areas. So tell me what you think about those.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start because it gets to the heart of why this matters so much.
Exactly, yeah.
So he starts off by explaining how religious freedom lets us honor God, putting him right at the center of our lives through worship and service. And this links directly to the 2 big commandments, love God, love your neighbor. So it's not just about being personally religious, it's about how that faith pushes us to act.
It's like this ripple effect, you know what I mean? Religious freedom gives people the space to connect with the divine, however that looks for them, and that connection often leads to serving others.
Yeah, it's beautiful, really.
It is, yeah. And you think about it, whether it's a giant cathedral or a small prayer meeting, those expressions of belief can lead to amazing acts of service.
Absolutely.
So what about the second benefit?
All right, so the second benefit Elder Rasband brings up is all about fostering those expressions of belief, hope, and peace. And this one really hits home for me because it's about making a space where people can share their different perspectives without being afraid of being shut down or ridiculed.
Right, being able to be yourself authentically.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting? He actually shares a story from his own experience at the G20 Interfaith Forum, which is this platform where leaders from all sorts of faiths come together to talk about global issues.
Oh, wow. That sounds fascinating. Tell me more about Elder Rasband's experience there.
So picture this. He's surrounded by all these religious leaders, right? And they may not agree on every theological point, but there's this obvious respect and a willingness to hear each other out. And when it's his turn to wrap up his speech, he feels strongly about ending it in the name of Jesus Christ, even though no one else had done that.
That's pretty bold, huh?
It is. It's a small thing, but it's powerful. He chose to be true to his beliefs, even when it would have been easier to just go with the flow. And that's what religious freedom gives us the power to do, to be ourselves, true to our values, and hopefully inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, to live authentically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, that freedom to express ourselves often leads to incredible results. And that brings us to the third benefit, the power of religion to get people to help each other out
And we see this all the time, right? People inspired by their faith to serve those in need.
all the time.
He even mentions some partnerships between the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and groups like Catholic Charities and Islamic Relief, all working together to help refugees, provide vaccines, and ease suffering around the world.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It shows how powerful interfaith collaboration can be and the good that religion can do for society as a whole. It reminds me of that story in the Gospel of Luke about Jesus meeting a widow who's on her way to bury her only son. She's absolutely devastated, facing a really tough future, but Jesus, full of compassion, performs a miracle and brings her son back to life.
That's such a powerful image of how faith can lead to action. It makes you think,
Yeah.
what little act of kindness can we do today that could make a difference in someone's life?
That's a great question.
Right. And so that leads us to the fourth and final benefit, how religious freedom helps shape values and morals. It gives us a framework for dealing with life's challenges and promotes things like honesty, gratitude, forgiveness, patience, charity, compassion, kindness, all that good stuff. These are timeless principles that make communities strong and help us grow as people.
They really are foundational, aren't they?
Absolutely.
But here's where Elder Rasband throws out this thought-provoking question. If we kick religion out of public conversation, who's going to teach and live out these values? It's a serious question to consider. If we silence the voices of faith, who's going to fill that gap? Will the values we care about even survive? It feels like this is where things start to get really interesting.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think you're right. It's like he's challenging us to really think about the consequences, not just for ourselves, but for society as a whole. It's like he's saying, hey, religious freedom isn't just some abstract idea. It has real-world effects on how we live, how we treat each other, and the kind of future we build together.
And he ends with this powerful statement urging everyone to stand up for religious freedom. It's not just about protecting our own rights, it's about protecting everyone's right to believe. This really resonates with me because it's a call to action, not just a philosophical discussion.
Absolutely. I completely agree.
What are your thoughts?
It's easy to get caught up in the abstract, but when you hear those stories, when you see the real-world impact, it really brings it home.
It does, yeah. It makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. It's easy to think of religious freedom as this, big, kind of vague idea,
Yeah, for sure.
But Elder Rasband, he really brings it down to earth when he talks about it as an expression of our ability to choose. He reminds us that God gave us that ability, and religious freedom is right at the heart of it.
And it's not just about making choices for ourselves, it's about how those choices affect everyone around us.
Exactly.
He uses this really powerful image of religious freedom being like a healing balm for the world that's struggling with so much division and conflict.
It's about finding those things we have in common, building bridges, and remembering we're all human, even when we don't agree on everything.
What really hit home for me was when he challenged each of us to ask ourselves, what am I doing to promote religious freedom in my own life?
Right.
It's not always about these big dramatic actions or getting involved in politics. Sometimes it's those small, everyday things that can make a real difference.
Totally. Like if you hear someone saying something intolerant, you can speak up.
Yeah.
Or just showing basic respect for people who believe differently than you.
Yeah, just being kind.
Exactly. It's about creating a culture of empathy and understanding. And it starts with our own families, our communities, where we work.
He also talks about interfaith dialogue, which reminded me of his experience at that G20 Interfaith Forum. What were your takeaways from that part?
Well, he talks about being with all these leaders from different faiths. And while they didn't necessarily agree on every little theological point, they were all united in this desire to make the world a better place. It really showed me how religious freedom can be this incredible force for good, especially when people from diverse backgrounds come together to tackle problems.
It's like each faith brings its own unique strengths to the table. And when you combine those, you get something much more powerful and effective than any one group could achieve on its own.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to protect those different perspectives. When you try to silence certain voices, you actually weaken everyone.
But let's be honest, standing up for religious freedom isn't always easy. There are going to be times when our beliefs are challenged, and we might face opposition or even ridicule.
Yeah, that's where courage comes in.
Yeah.
Elder Rasband reminds us that standing up for what you believe in might mean getting out of your comfort zone, speaking out when it's easier to just stay quiet, being a voice for those who are being marginalized or silenced. It's about remembering that the freedoms we enjoy today weren't just handed to us. They came through the sacrifices of those who came before us.
He draws a parallel to the early pioneers of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints who went through incredible persecution and hardship, but never gave up on their faith.
Right.
It makes you realize that the things we often take for granted, like the freedom to worship however we choose, were hard-won and need to be protected.
Absolutely. And that's why education and awareness are so crucial. We need to understand the history, the laws, the challenges that are still out there when it comes to religious freedom. We need to have these thoughtful conversations that go beyond just sound bites and headlines to really understand the nuances of these issues.
And I think that's what we aim to do here on the Deep Dive, to give you the context and insights you need to form your own informed opinions.
We believe that knowledge is power, and that when people are empowered, they can be a real difference in promoting religious freedom all over the world.
So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
What's one tangible thing you can do today to champion the cause of religious freedom?
Yeah.
It could be something small, like learning more about a different faith tradition or speaking up when you see intolerance.
Every action, no matter how small, can help create a more tolerant and inclusive world. What do you think?
You know, as we've been talking about Elder Rasband's address, I've been thinking about how religious freedom isn't just about protecting what people believe.
Right.
It's like a key ingredient for a society to really thrive.
Oh, for sure.
He makes the point that it opens up a space where everyone can do their best work,
Well,
be more innovative, and come up with creative solutions to problems.
that's a really good point. When people feel like they can express their beliefs and values without fear, they're more likely to have those meaningful conversations. You know,
Yeah.
the ones that challenge assumptions and spark new ideas.
Yeah, totally.
It's like religious freedom creates this marketplace where different views can be debated and tested, and that ultimately leads to a stronger and more vibrant society.
And that mix of different perspectives is so crucial, especially with the complex problems we're facing today.
Absolutely.
It's like having a team of experts from different backgrounds all working together to solve a problem.
I like that analogy.
Each person brings their unique knowledge to the table, which leads to a more well-rounded approach.
Exactly. And that's what makes attempts to stifle religious freedom so harmful.
Right.
When you silence certain voices or perspectives, you're basically limiting our ability to find those truly innovative, out-of-the-box solutions.
You're cutting yourself short.
Yeah, it's like trying to solve a puzzle, but you only have half the pieces.
Exactly. Elder Rasband also talks about how religious freedom can actually promote peace and harmony.
Hmm.
He says that when people feel respected and valued for what they believe, they're less likely to turn to violence or extremism.
That's so important. History has shown us again and again that conflict and persecution often stem from religious intolerance.
Unfortunately, yeah.
When we create a society that truly values and protects religious freedom, we're creating the conditions for a more peaceful and just world.
It's like creating a pressure valve, you know?
Yeah.
It lets those different viewpoints be expressed peacefully, and that helps reduce the tension that can build up when those voices are suppressed.
And that pressure valve is so important for a stable and united society.
Absolutely.
When people feel heard and respected, they're more likely to work together for the common good and to find those peaceful solutions when disagreements come up.
It's about finding that common ground.
Exactly. So what's all of this mean for us as individuals? How can we play a part in building a culture that truly values and protects religious freedom?
It's a great question.
Well, Elder Rasband gives us some really practical advice.
Okay.
He suggests we start by looking at our own attitudes and behaviors.
Makes sense.
Do we genuinely respect the beliefs of others, even when they're different from our own?
Hmm.
Are we willing to listen with an open mind and look for that common ground?
It's about going beyond just tolerating those differences to actually understanding and appreciating that richness of human belief.
Yes, recognizing that our shared humanity is bigger than any of our differences.
And it's about speaking up against injustice and discrimination whenever and wherever we see it.
Right.
Whether it's challenging a hateful comment or supporting policies that protect religious freedom, we all have a part to play in creating a more just and equitable world.
To do.
Elder Rasband reminds us that the fight for religious freedom never really ends.
Mhm.
It needs constant attention, education, and advocacy,
Right.
but it's a fight worth having because it has the power to change the future of our world.
It really does.
And he leaves us with this powerful call to action to be champions of religious freedom, not just for ourselves, but for everyone.
It's a responsibility we all share.
It is.
It really is.
Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into Elder Rasband's address to heal the world, I hope you're leaving with a better grasp on just how important religious freedom is.
Me too.
Not just for each of us personally, but for the well-being of our society and the world at large. Thanks for joining us.